Hey guys, Nish Quick here, and I am back with Yggdrasil once again. It's been a while, but Yggdrasil's back on the EXP podcast. And some of you guys might remember Yggdrasil from prior Xenoblade and Zelda discussions, but he's a fellow content creator and Xenoblade fan. You want to introduce yourself to the new viewers, Yggdrasil?
Oh, of course. Hey, everyone, it's Yggdrasil, and welcome back to another round of the EXP podcast. I'm super stoked to be here. We're here literally recording this a day before Tears of the Kingdom comes out, so we're all hyped up. And then also, we're still just barely getting off the hype from Future Redeemed, which it's crazy. You know, that was announced what, 3-4 weeks, like a month ago. We got our hands on it 2 weeks back, and we're still riding that high. And then here we are, Nintendo's just throwing us in on Tears of the Kingdom.
It's funny because like
crazy things.
Both of us were very surprised about the kind of shadow drop for Future Redeemed, because I was like, oh, Xenoblade 3 DLC is gonna be like announced. Like I was like, we're gonna get a trailer in April for like a June release after Tears of the Kingdom, but we got an April trailer for a release a week right after the trailer, and I was like, this, you know, like there's no time to make content, there's no time to theorize anything.
There wasn't. I was expecting a slow burn like how they handled the first game. I was like, okay, they're gonna have Twitter going up like midnight posts for a few weeks. We're gonna get a little bit of drip info. Maybe I could use this for content, you know, like save up for like a week and then post all the new updates. And they're like, yeah, no, it's out in a week. Here's the final trailer.
Yeah, it was a very quick turnaround, but I will say it was very much worth it. And I will say also at the same time, like, I don't know how you feel about this. I wanted to ask you. So I had very conflicting feelings about this release scheduling thing, because we got the trailer and then a week later it was there, like we had the game. So that was good, because like we didn't have a lot of time to like wait and anticipate and speculate. And but also for a lot of us content creators, like I remember you had to like rush out a bunch of videos, and I did like just my reaction in one video, but then like Lux and NL and some other people were like scrambling. So how did you feel about that? Like it was a pretty stressful week for a lot of us Xenoblade fans, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely missed that. I definitely missed that wave, because by that time, like, you know, I wanted to still make a detailed analysis, so that's what I did, and it went like almost nowhere. I think it has like 250 some views or so, which, like, if there was more time for fans to breathe, I think it would have done a lot better, because, you know, we had people like Lux and NL, they just went straight on. They like didn't even bother with like a detailed analysis. They just like gave their thoughts, published them out there right away. So they got all that limelight. But it's cool.
Yeah, it was very hectic.
I would have liked it. Yeah. It would have been a really good time for growth for some other people if they just provided a little bit more time for us. But still,
yeah,
my goodness.
And
I'm still not complaining.
Yeah, it's very like the whole Xenoblade hype cycle. Like with 3, it was announced and then it was like pushed forward like from September to July. So like Xenoblade 3 has been really treating us good with release timings and scheduling, but also like with scheduling with our like personal life and our content creation schedules, it's all over the place. And like you contrast that with Tears of the Kingdom, which was announced 4 years back, and we're getting the game now. And like I was talking to my friend, like literally I told him last year in 2022 we hardly got any news. And when I mean by we hardly got any news, I would say 2021 we got more news than we did in 2022. But that's another topic altogether. But what are your basic like general thoughts and feelings regarding Future Redeemed? I know you made a video. It's in my watch later playlist. I'm gonna watch it soon. But I want to know what your thoughts are. And like this is the end of the Klaus Saga. It's a very bittersweet feeling, and I especially like with you, Yggdrasil, you've been with the Klaus Saga with Xenoblade since like the very beginning, since like Xenoblade 1 on the Wii. So how do you feel about that?
I'm staggered that it's still, you know, at a definitive part, where we could say that, you know, the Klaus Saga has concluded. I truly, but yeah, so my video today just covers a little bit of some of how I feel about Future Redeemed and what's in store, but I'm going to iterate. I would love to iterate on here. Future Redeemed itself, fantastic. I'm so glad. One of the things that I saw a few people at the very start, they were saying like, oh, this feels like a fan service shill game, you know, all these callbacks. And I was like, it's deserved. This is the end of that saga. These are characters that we love. These are stories and motifs that we love, that they're, you know, they clearly, Takahashi clearly wants to let these characters rest. It's their time to rest. This is their last hurrah. Let them explore these characters and motifs just a little bit longer. Give us a little bit more depth and meaning and endearment to these characters and people that we love. So I think Future Redeemed did a wonderful job right there. It's funny because I was thinking, like, in terms of the marketing and whatnot, especially with the last two DLC titles, there was a clear favoritism towards Xenoblade 2. In my opinion, you know, with Ino and then Masha relating to House Cassini.
Oh yeah, the previous waves, because now we know that Masha being from House Cassini, she's a descendant of Pandoria, actually. And I don't know, like, now that we know that in hindsight, it's kind of obvious when you look at Masha, and she gives kind of Pandoria vibes, but no one really, like, put two and two together, because I was like, she looks like someone I know, like, and then now when we know it's Pandoria, it's like, wow.
The lighting, I don't know, maybe that was the thing. But yeah, it's weird also, like, thinking back on just, you know, we go back to the founder statues and we spend a year speculating on who are these people, and they're just verbatim the exact same model, just like in statue form. People could have been drawing glimmer art for a long time, let me just tell you that.
It's funny because I remember when Xenoblade 3 released, and I like went into the city for the first time, and I went to Memorial Hall. I saw the statues. I was like, this is the DLC. This is it. And then when I beat the game and I go online, everyone's like, oh, I don't want the Founders DLC. I don't want it. And I was like, what? Why? It's gonna be so cool.
Mixed.
And I went back and watched some of our discussions in the past, and we're like, it's gonna be a Founders DLC, right? And we were both in kind of an agreement on that. And I agree that some people were like, oh, if we get a Founders DLC, how is it going to tie everything together? But Future Redeemed geniusly did it. And I also think, I think one of my favorite things about Future Redeemed is it recontextualized a lot of, like, Ionios lore that was confusing to us. And it made things a little more, I wouldn't say obvious, but it just kind of illuminated a lot of mystery. So yeah.
There's a few things I still wish they covered, such as, like, you know, how did they discover the medium of light? How did Nia truly become the Queen of Agnes? That's still undisclosed. People are going to be talking about Mithra's kid for time and time again.
Oh, actually, let's talk about that right now, because I want to talk about this. There was a meme online on Twitter, which you have definitely seen, and I want to talk about this because some people have conflicting opinions on this, and it was very interesting because there was like an infographic going like around online, and a lot of popular Xenoblade Twitter people were posting about this, saying that Mobius D or Dirk could be Mithra's son. And the thing is, like, I saw that image and everyone was quote tweeting. It was like, bad theory, whatever. And then some people were like, oh, this is not a well thought out theory. And I was like, I actually kind of, I don't fully subscribe to it, because the evidence is a little hazy from the infographic. The evidence is kind of there, but at the same time, I'm like, I wouldn't be opposed to this entirely, because a lot of people, I can understand. It's kind of sad that Mithra goes through what she does, and then her son turns into this, like, maniacal serial killer. It's kind of sad, but at the same time, like, media has done this in the past, where, like, someone comes from, like, a very loyal, heroic family, and then they turn evil. Kylo Ren is a very perfect example of that in Star Wars. So, like, despite what I feel about the sequel Star Wars movies, I did enjoy Kylo Ren, especially in the beginning parts of the trilogy.
Who didn't for the start? For Kylo Ren,
yeah, but what do you feel about D as Mithra's son?
I'm sorry, I don't buy it. I think it was clearly a joke that was gassed up a bit too much. I can understand some of the contextualizations of it, and obviously, you know, we have it's been obviously a thing before. It's like you were saying, the character, that the noble lineage character where someone just goes down the line. But I don't really think they would do that for Xenoblade characters, especially Rex's family, you know? I really have a hard time seeing that. And now obviously, like, you know, they're all thrown into Ionios, everyone's at each other's throats. I mean, look at Glimmer at the very start of Future Redeemed. But
I think it would have been more obvious if
much.
D was in in Future Redeemed, because I remember this theory was like floating around before the game, like it was after the trailer and before the game released. So everyone was like, my theory, which I didn't like make a video on, but I was like, what if we see Mobius D killing Uni for the first time, and then that's like part of a story quest, and like Rex fights D, and then Rex remembers, but D doesn't know who he is, and I was like, oh, that'd be so cool.
I would have loved to have seen D or other Mobius at that stage if they were present at that stage in Ionis' lifetime during the time of Ascent Omnia region. One of the things I think they missed most actually was not having prior Mobius, like a young Triton, show up.
Yeah, that would have been cool. Really nice.
But quickly for the Mithra D stuff, my personal theory, I don't think we're going to get any context to Mithra's kid whatsoever. Instead, what's going to happen months or even years down the line, Monolith Soft is just going to randomly drop like official concept art of the Rex family, and we're gonna have like a better shot of who Mithra's kid is. It will likely just be unnamed, but we'll get that photo.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, I think so too.
They drop commemorative art at least twice a year, you know.
And here's the thing, a lot of people are still like confused about some Future Redeemed stuff. They want some closure. They want to know all this stuff. You know when I think some of this will come is when we get the Trinity set, the Trinity box set. And I unfortunately couldn't get it. I wasn't able to drop the money for that. But one of my friends who actually lives very close by to me got it. So I'm like, hey, when you get that in the summer, come over to my house and we're gonna like dissect everything. So yeah. We might even get like fan art from Saito in that or something. So yeah, or not fan art, official art from Saito. Yeah, but
I can definitely see that. I would love to have gone a hand on it as well, but it's the same sort of deal. It's a lot of money to drop.
Yeah, I did want to talk about more story related stuff. I made a video about Shulk and Rex and the characterization of them, how they were portrayed, how they were included in the story, and I really liked how both of them were, because it's really interesting. We see Shulk. Last we saw him, he was around how old was he in Future Connected? Maybe 20 or so, 20, 21 ish.
He'd have to be around 20 to 21, because if I remember right, the whole trip around Bionis to Mechanis, the whole base storyline, fans believe takes place over like a year or so. That's like a general fan consensus I've heard thrown around a few times.
But then Future Connected is confirmed to take place 2 years later, right? Or 1 year?
1 year beyond that.
Okay, so Melia is 89 or 90. No, Melia's 90, Shulk is 20.
About.
Yeah, because I think Melia was 88. Yeah.
That's if we can take the general fan consensus as canon, but some people would argue against that. But that I believe it's like that. Yeah. So I always like having a little bit of a time factor in RPGs.
Yeah. Well, basically, Shulk was in his early 20s. Rex was 15 when we last saw him in Xenoblade 2. And now, like, I would say, like, appearance-wise, they look like they're in their 40s. That's what I think they are. And I think they were done so well. I love the conversations they had with their kids. And, like, I wanted to hear your take on this. What did you think about Rex specifically? Because I had this whole idea of Rex pre-Xenoblade 3 launch. I was like, he's gonna be a big buff guy. He's gonna be like the lovable, loud, life of the party uncle who comes to all the family get-togethers and riles up the crowd and everything. He was that to an extent. But what I did not expect to see, and what I really liked seeing, was him being stern and assertive and like giving that like really strict dad energy when he was like scolding Glimmer and like other people in the party. And I really liked seeing that. So what did you think about Rex specifically?
I think they did Rex probably like even more so than Shulk. I think they did him just wonderfully, you know? The level of acceptance he has towards everyone, and then meanwhile still being a relatively strict father figure towards Glimmer, seeing how haphazard she is. Like, it's coming out obviously out of state of worry, but then meanwhile, you know, you just have him throwing quick wits. He's like all in on the fight. I truly enjoyed it, and just seeing that level of growth that he achieved.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, you know, like, people can joke all about Giga Chad Rex and whatnot, but to see what he became, to see like everything he's picked up from his mentor figures, his gear style is based off of Zeke, yet he fights with Morag's skill and
Yeah,
precision with the
he
dual
mentioned
Aegis
Zeke
swords.
too. Like he was
Yeah.
like Glimmer was like, "Hey, how'd you lose your eye?" And he was like, "Oh, it was in a tough fight with Alpha, but it kind of reminds me of my mentor who had an eye patch as well or something." And I was like, "Yes,
Yeah.
Zeke." And I didn't do all the community side quests, but I think in one of the side quests, Linka mentions her father, who is of course Zeke, and like she was like, "Oh, you remember Dad? He doesn't remember what monsters he fought or something like that." And I was like, "Ah, that's so cool."
Linka's birthday quest.
Yeah, but yeah, Rex truly shows like he shows the responsible adult he's grown up to become, not only in his like interactions with Glimmer. I love that last interaction with Glimmer before they go off into the Black Mountains. That was a really good talk they had. And I just love how he balances the the jovial energy with that stern and serious energy as well, because whenever he's like talking to like A and Shulk about like really serious things, he's like, "Hey, this is what happened, this is what we need to do." And I'm like, that's not the Rex I remember, but this is the Rex that I knew that he would become, you know?
No, absolutely. The way that they make his character, the way that they have his character go between the stern and the jovial is just, it's very well done. It's very well paced. It doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like he's just trying to like swap between two modes. No, it's a natural response. He's a wartime character, and he's known for being this sort of not haphazard. He's definitely much less so in his youth, but he's known to take things a bit more as they come. But when it comes to having Glimmer out, and now it's, you know, this is a character who's my daughter, and it's like, you know, it's clearly all screwed up. We're in Ionios, and like this has
They
been
don't
going
remember
on
us
for
either.
so
Like Nicole
long.
and
Yeah.
Glimmer don't remember their parents or their fathers.
Exactly, they wouldn't know. But it's a tough decision for him and for Shulk. Shulk is a lot less expressive, I would argue, than Rex. But
I will
Rex,
say this about
Shulk still does
Shulk.
a wonderful job.
Yeah, I'll say this about Shulk. I really like that it was really early on in the story when Shulk approaches him and he's like, "Hey, I don't know how you do this, like this whole parenting thing." Like they have like a really good heart to heart, and then Shulk is like, "I don't know how you've done this in the past. I know you grew up really independently as a kid." And then Rex is like, "Yeah, it was just me and Gramps for a while." And I was like, "Oh, this takes me back." But yeah,
Right.
Shulk was also good. I think he took
You know
the
where-
more, yeah.
Sorry, I was gonna say real quick. You know where Shulk really shined though? The combat yelling, like his yells when he's in combat. If you
Monado, rage.
rage, right?
Yeah,
Rage
like
was
I was like,
strong.
why
It's
is
so well handled?
at first I was like, why is Rex screaming out Monado arts? And I was like, oh wait, that's Shulk and Adam
That's
Howden just
Shulk
going
in
crazy.
full fury. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
But I really liked Shulk because I think Shulk had some really good moments in the Affinity scenes, especially when he's like mentioning Fiora and Dunban, and like I love the one where he's like, "Oh, my mentor used to live in this house and I used to come over all the time and he taught me so much." And Rex is like, "Is that your mentor or your brother-in-law?" And he's like, "Oh," and then he gets flustered. And then another one where you go out to Lookout Park and he talks about Fiora and everything, basically
Yeah.
telling Nicole what his mother was like. So what were your favorite Affinity scenes, if you remember them? I'm sure you
would
do.
have. Yeah, I do remember a few. One would definitely have to be Lookout Park. I think that's one of my more favorite, well-handled ones. There's the one by the Oh my goodness, the the ruins of Moritha one.
Yes, I love that.
There's also one I can't quite recall. There was one I was a little disappointed on. I can't remember the full context on, but I believe they're looking at Agnes Castle, and I thought it was going to be about Nia or some such, but I think it was just a discussion between A and Matthew.
Yeah.
It's
So basically,
so weird how.
Yeah,
No,
I think Neo was mentioned, and it was the one where Matthew was talking about the Ouroboros stone, and Rex was like, "Oh, you got that Ouroboros stone from the Queen of Agnes, Nia," and he was just being like very like he was just pressing the subject about Nia, and Shulk was like,
on it,
"Rex, relax." Yeah, but
yeah, it's also weird to think in that sort of context. You know, Queen of Agnes, Rex is technically king of Agnes in a sense, yet he's completely uninvolved in that aspect of the game.
Like you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but like that makes you think, like, how did Nia become Queen of Allrest? Like you would imagine that it was Pyra and Mithra. Why was it Nia? And I'm not complaining that it's Nia, because like I like Nia a lot, but like how did she get up there? Or is she just Queen of, like, is she just a ruler in Torgoth, or a ruler of Gormod, or what is that? And yeah, I really
she wasn't even royalty. Like it was the daughter of a provincial lord.
Yeah,
that's
her original driver, who was her father, was just a lord in Gormod, but he lost his status because he just spent all his money trying to find a cure for his actual daughter. That's what it was. Yeah. But I agree with you. I like that affinity scene at the ruins from the Cliffs of Moritha, because that's one of my favorite moments in Xenoblade 2. So hearing Shulk talk about the promise he made to Numa, Pyra, and Mithra was really nice. And then he mentions them, and everyone's like, "Oh, just say Pyra and Mithra," and I'm like, we know who they are. We know. Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
But
yeah.
What do you think happened to Pyra and Mithra? That is a very big question, and I was actually like, here's the thing, like I was surprised that we didn't see them in this. It's okay that we didn't, like it's fine, but like everyone was like, "Oh, we will see Pyra and Mithra in Xenoblade 3. They weren't in Xenoblade 3, and everyone's like, "We'll see them in Future Redeemed," and then they weren't there either. But they were heavily mentioned in Future Redeemed frequently. Like Numa was mentioned, Pyra and Mithra were mentioned, Logos is mentioned. We'll talk about that later, which is very cool. But and then we saw the picture at the end of 3. So what do you think happened to Pyra and Mithra? What's your theory on that?
And beyond that, and this dives into spoiler territory, but I mean, you know, this whole thing is probably very spoiler marked. I'll
have a warning at the beginning of the video.
Of course. But there's that at that very end of the scene, you know, inside the gauntlets that Matthew's carrying is Numa's core.
Noah's had it this entire time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The sheath to Lucky 7 is pretty much influenced and like involved with Numa's core, and I could sort of understand that because, you know, Xenoblade Future Redeemed was very consistent with showing that a core can exist separate from its actual blade. Like, you know, Ontos's core is
even
on
Glimmer
Niall's
herself.
body.
Glimmer's core crystal is just like a visual aesthetic thing, but it is a Numa core, and it's not really associated with her mother. Yeah.
Exactly. So I personally think, you know, they just, Mithra and Pyra, you know, they exist separate from the core due to the events at the end of 2, or they could at least, it's not reliant to be on someone's person or fused with someone for a matter of sustaining life or anything.
So do you think they're still blades? That is my question. Are they still blades?
I would still say yes, they are blades. They're definitely blades, but they're a different. They would be a different subset, or they would be like a true Aegis, as it was intended.
Okay.
Like how it was with I would like to say with Adam, even though we.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I was of the camp, but I don't know if this is true, because in Xenoblade 2, when Pyra and Mithra come back, we do see them with the core, right? We see them with the core on their chest.
I believe so, yes.
Yes. I was of the camp that they aren't blades anymore and they have finite lives, and they might have like passed away before the events of Ionios or before the events of Future Redeemed. That I don't know, but like, of course, the thing that debunks that theory is they still have their core crystals. And another thing is Nia sees the picture at the end of 3 and says, "I will see you all again soon." And by that, she means everyone. So I think they're still like, they're in Allrest in the frozen time, probably just chilling out in Fonset Village, just frozen, doing something.
I don't think it was a sacrifice on anyone's part. And as for like, you know, their aging or what are they right now, there is another vagary in 2 that's very poor, that's not all too well explained, which is Klaus's final gift to his children. Is that specifically a reference to the children as in like the general like humans and blades that were created as a result of his attempt at redemption? Or is this a more literal sense to his children being the children of the core, the Trinity processor? And in this case it would be Numa.
Yeah, I always thought it was a gift to Numa because I'm sure you know this, the end credits, One Last You, the lyrics, the very last part is like, "Can I ask you, God, despite all this?" Like, it's basically asking Klaus, "Can I have one more chance to be with the one person that I love?" And that wish is granted. So I don't know, like that's the beauty of the end of Xenoblade 2. It's still like it's not confirmed. We don't have a definitive thing, and some people are like, "Oh, I wanted like definitive closure and answers." I like this mystery as well. I like even some of the mystery involved in Xenoblade 3. I like some of that mystery because you're like, it prompts this discussion stuff that we're having. So yeah,
I'm inclined to agree with you on the ending for 2 right there. I truly think that's also the same case. I know there's a lot of translation theories with the ending of 2 specifically because the last few words are left entirely silent, and people went crazy with like Japanese lip sync, seeing what trying to see what
I am Pyro or I am Mithra or something.
Pyro, I'm Mithra, or it's like welcome back, or it's like I'm home.
But in Japanese it would have been I am Homura, or however that is said.
Yeah.
Watashi
Or
wa
another
Homura
one
Hikari,
that's
something like that.
Or another one that's simply I'm home Rex. Like I think that's the other one. Which I think that one has more clarity to now. I think it's the I am home Rex one, but of course translationists and other people might like to argue.
It's interesting.
But it's fine to leave something like that open, and 3 did provide a little bit more ground for my side of things, so you know I'm quite happy there.
I will say the thing that I didn't realize until I went on Twitter and opened all the spoiler tags and everything was the Sword of the End. That one blew my mind because I was like, what the heck is this Sword of the End? Why does N have it? Why does it look like this? And the thing is, like, I had this huge question about it. What is the Sword of Origin? What is the Sword of the End? What is Lucky 7? What is this, right? The answer, like, this is what I love about Xenoblade, is we have these questions, we made these theories, but the answer was in our face the entire time. We just didn't know it. The gauntlet for Noah's Lucky 7 was powered by Numa because of the green glow that happens whenever he like activates it, right? For I already spoiled it, whatever. For N, his Lucky 7 has a purple glow, which means it is powered by the Logos core, or it is heavily implied, and a lot of like they don't flat out say that in Future Redeemed, but it's through like the cinematography and the camera work, because like Rex says something like
that.
He's like, they would appreciate this choice that we're making, and by they he means Logos and Numa, and it cuts to the fist and it cuts to the sword and the end's sheath, and you're like, oh, for me, I didn't notice that my first time. Like I saw the Numa core, I didn't put 2 and 2 together with Logos and the Sword of the End gauntlet. It's so genius how Takahashi like brought everything together, and everyone, like my friend was like, I need to see the 3 Trinity cores together. This friend, his theory was Mithra's child or son or daughter would have the Logos core, and then A would be Ontos and Glimmer would be Numa, right? That it didn't work out like that, but it was in a very interesting and unique way that it was done. A being Alvis or Ontos, and then the Numa core being in the fists, and Logos core being in this in the sort of the end. Yes. So what did you think of that? That was a pretty mind-blowing revelation to me.
It really is, though. I didn't, after they threw everything at us with, showing us Moritha from before times, and then you're just stuck there for 8 minutes with all of this exposition, and then it cuts to Ontos, and you're back in the center of origin. Future Redeemed just had so many like unequivocal points,
and we haven't talked about what you just
lore.
said, like the Moritha Radamanthus thing. We haven't talked about that yet, but yeah, sorry, continue.
No, but even prior to that, it's like the first time like they talk about like what Ontos is even doing, like like why is Ontos doing this, and then Alpha just like casually drops. It's like, yeah, no, here's what happened. It's like they seek this is why, but they seek it with the city. They like Ontos seeks a future, but he sees a future only in the people of the city, aka he needs a city host. And then meanwhile, like this whole attack, it's like, and then it only just dawns on you, there's like a random ceasefire between the city and Mobius, and it's like you're tracing like all of these points back to 3, and then now you have Moritha, like the before times of Moritha, the radio hits. And then you're going even further into that with more context for N and Numa's core just thrown in the mix.
Like
it just threw it just added context everywhere it could, and the best thing of all was that context almost always, if not always, did make sense. The one thing I only wish I could have seen more context for was Mobius itself with Zed.
It's funny because like I was like, this is Zed's chance of redemption. I'm holding out for Zed. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. And what's funny is I already liked N. After Future Redeemed, N is now my favorite Xenoblade Chronicles villain. I love him. Like, I love his character. Amazing character. You know what? Zed plummeted down on the list. I mean, it's not that Zed is bad or whatever, but I'm just like, Zed, what are you, Zed?
How can he show up at the very start, call Ontos his god, and then the only other time we see him is for a minute and a half sitting in the theater mumbling?
Yeah, Zed is such a meme now. It's funny because we saw that, like NL's reaction to seeing Zed with Shulk and Rex was hilarious. He's like, why is Zed here? Why is he with the party and everything? And I was also like, hey, are they gonna like are Shulk and Rex like indirectly Mobius? Like, what's up with that? And like that's not what ended up happening, of course, but it was basically just like it was like the ceasefire, which you were talking about, Mobius in the city ceasefire, which I also wish that was expanded further, because Shulk talks about in the beginning, like during or before the boss fight with W, he's like, we agreed on this is not what Zed and I agreed with, and then that's never talked about ever again.
But I will say the one little thing they did for Zed was show like a little bit more of a tactician side with attacking, with recruiting N specifically at that point in time to not only
to combat
provide
Alpha
himself. Yeah, it not only provided himself an excellent soldier, someone that's been trying and not nearly successful against him, but he's like the closest human being that ever existed to taking down Mobius. And then now it's like, okay, I'm going to recruit you to Mobius, and in exchange, I will give you what you want most, which is M. I like to spend it in an endless now with M. But I need you to take out your city, the city you built, and there's two reasons for it. One is because it's a show of courage, which is it's not courage, it's a show of your determination and will that like you're seeking the endless now isn't marred or deteriorated by your intrinsic feelings towards the people of the city, the people you have built. But the other real reason is because the god of this world wants to erase it. and they seek a host within the city. So we
Threatening
need
the
you to
Endless
deny
Now.
them this power, and also by preventing him from getting a host and keeping him at a standstill, we will be one step closer to regaining control of Origin, and Mobius will be supreme again in Ionios.
Yeah, and like I already liked N so much because of his determination to do what must be done to like reclaim his true love again. But now we have extra context of that, because initially it was just, hey, I'm doing this just to get my wife back, to get M back. But now it was not only to get M back, but also to preserve that Endless Now, which was being threatened by Alpha, who was going to basically end it all and start anew. And that's amazing. Like N goes so far to get what he wants, and that's like the best kind of character for me. Like any character who will go leaps and bounds to do anything it takes to get what they want, and I really like that.
No, he's definitely well handled.
Yeah,
100%. And just continued to thrive, but unfortunately Zed just had a little bit of a fallback as compared to what I would have liked.
It's fine to me because I like N so much that Zed is just like, you can.
It's crazy how Mobius just like continues to fall down in terms of my expectations. Again, like we said it earlier, imagine if seeing a young Zed, or not a younger Zed, a young Triton or some other Mobius that we knew from the past. Instead, we still have Saturday night cartoon villain or Saturday morning cartoon villains when there's like two Mobius just showing. It's like, oh, who are you? This is a fight. This is our glorious battle, and then we whoop them.
Yeah.
And like then another one's like, I'm here to avenge the other two fellows. And then like he was a spectacular fight.
Yeah.
Don't get me
W
wrong.
was one of the best boss fights in the series for me, and it is
without a
because
doubt.
many of us, I've asked other friends, and I don't know if you had this as well, but many of us didn't realize they had to take down the flame clocks before you fight the Mobius. So
you know what? I actually did realize that because in my first head, and I don't believe you've played World of Warcraft, but
no, I have not.
Yeah, there's a boss. It was 3 expansions ago, the very first boss of the final expansion for Legion. It's called the Garathi Worldbreaker. I think that's what it's called. And it's the exact same gimmick. It has 2 cannons on each side. You take down the cannon, and that lets you weaken it.
Oh,
nice. So I actually was thinking
that.
about that because that fight looked so similar, and I gave it a shot, and sure enough, that was the correct way to go.
That's so cool. Many of us went full force onto W, and we're like, why aren't we doing any damage? And then we did a chain attack, and I did some crazy damage on the chain attack, and then the health bar didn't even move. And then I pressed the L button, and I was like, oh, I can target the flame clogs. I'm so dumb. Yeah, that was a fun fight. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that.
It was, because, you know, it's just, you know, a big sweaty fight against a giant Mobius that then it's like, oh, you thought you were on being cornered? Well, it's like, look here, here's like, you see those Pharaonuses? I'm just gonna fuse with them right now, and then it just leads to a bigger, like, more crazy over the tail fight.
And it kind of it gave a hint to why as well, because like I think Panacea or Linka were like, oh, what Mobius could do this, and then Shulk was like, oh, I know I've heard of Mobius that can that have engineered flame clocks like this.
2 or 3 times. Yeah. Why's like concept was thrown around like 2 or 3 times.
Oh, what were the other
times? I think it was just for the same context as like creating the flame clock. Which, like, again, back to Mobius, like, come on, we could have had more context for X and Y just beyond like, a little
I would have
Y.
appreciated that, because we saw from Nia's explanation that X, Y, and Z were the first Mobius. So, like, what created, like, why were they the first ones, and how did they, like, spread this Mobius force throughout Ionios and whatnot? I also, here's a few things that are a little hazy to me, which, I mean, I guess I just have to look into the dialogue and lore a bit more. Shulk and Rex's presence in Ionios is a little confusing. The whole avatar concept is a little confusing. And Alpha, I am still, like, coming to realization on that. I liked how they handled Alpha. Many people were opposed to it because they were like, oh, if A wasn't a part of this story, then I would have been very upset seeing Alvis like this.
Right.
I already kind of accepted that because I wanted Alvis to be the villain of base Xenoblade 3. So like I got my wish in Future Redeemed, but I'm very curious how the being of Alpha came to be from Alvis. Like Alvis like gave Shulk the wish, like, what do you want, Shulk? I want a world with no gods. He created the new world for Shulk, and then he just like vanished into thin air and became the core crystal. That core crystal was then used to create Origin, and then within Origin, Alpha is born through I guess what remains.
Well, Alpha was created, or sorry, I guess it was just, acting without Logos and Numa present, because Logos is destroyed, Numa is sort of removed from the tether of the Trinity core processor, and that just leads Alpha to feed on itself as a machine.
Okay. And but was like Alvis's conscience and humanity in Xenoblade 1 was still intact because Logos and Numa were in another world within Allrest? Is that your understanding?
I'm not all too sure of. I don't know why specifically.
That's a little confusing, but I do.
Or why specifically at that point in time do you need someone from the city at that point in time? Let alone why Shulk and Rex are at that specific point in Ionios as well. And it's just I can sort of let it all slide because it does fit into place, and it would have had to have happened in the past of Ionios. It's just like, why these moments? Why this time where you're just waiting for someone within the city to have someone with the same sort of despair towards the world of Ionios as Niel did? Was it really just waiting for someone like Niel to show up so they can be like a very competent avatar for Alpha to proceed with that plan?
Yeah. I think Alpha being like basically the core of Origin, that was mind-blowing. Like, I didn't realize that Ontos was used to create Origin. So Ontos was used to create Origin, and once Mobius was created from Origin, once Mobius created the Kavesi and Agnian war and everything, I guess Ontos, being the heart and soul of Ionios, was like, I don't like this, I don't like where this is going, and then like tried to be like, hey, I want to find someone in the city who can help me out, and just go elsewhere. But my whole thing was, up until the end, I was like, why doesn't Alpha, like, Alpha going into the future, what's so wrong about that? Alpha wants to get away from the craziness of Kevis and Agnes and whatnot. And then I realized that Alpha wanted to like go back home meaning back to like the Radamanthus Authority place, and just kind of, that was my understanding. He just wanted to go back and do like make life the way it was before, but eventually like the inevitability would be that humans would have that hubris and make the same mistakes.
Because everything that created Alpha would eventually, like, if he's acting simply on what was created prior, even as a machine, he would still at some point enact in the same way that would just lead back to the downfall of humanity. So he's like, instead of that, just give humans the choice, which is what they're fighting for this entire time.
But I guess just vocalizing that myself made me sort of understand it and accept it a bit more. But before we close out, final things I wanted to talk about. We'll save the radio for the end. But before that, just we haven't talked much about the characters out. We talked a little bit about the kids and Shulk and Rex. What did you think about Matthew, A, Panacea, Linka, and even like Nicole and Glimmer? We didn't talk about them much because I have some opinions on these characters and I want to hear what you have to say as well.
I think that all of the characters that they brought in were exceedingly well, especially Matthew, just, you know, being a lovable goofball with no ulterior motive whatsoever.
Matthew's great.
He and Adam share the exact same sort of mentality. It's like there is a little bit of a burden. The only thing is Matthew doesn't necessarily understand that as much as Adam. Maybe, you know, he's not royal lineage or whatever.
Yeah, it's
still of the same, you know, help. It's still of the same field, you know, help the people. We'll go on an adventure. We'll help the people. We'll keep those who are near us safe. And then after the adventure's done, we're going on another adventure. And that's the exact same motif as Adam. Only thing is, like, Adam understands a little bit more of that sort of weight, whereas Matthew is thrown into the middle of the fold.
Yeah, and Matthew is very curious. He's like, "Hey, why aren't you telling me any of this? What is going on here?" And it's very interesting.
Halfway halfway up through the Black Mountains, and he's just like, "Should I be trusting you, A?" You know?
Yeah, exactly. And then what's even cooler is like Matthew has his own motives to get Niall back, to get his sister back, whereas like everyone is wanting to help Matthew out, but their overarching goals kind of overlap. Shulk and Rex want to stop Alpha, but then they realize Matthew's sister Niall is now the host or avatar for Alpha. That's not how I expected Founder Doyle's story to go, but that's how it happened, and it was done very well. I actually liked Niall. Everyone's like, "Oh, Niall, boring character." I really liked Niall as a character. I
think a lot of people were just disappointed that Niall just like in all the recollections, like past like the starting recollection point, she just ends up complaining of the state of Ionius, but it's really just meant to like solidify why she's such a good candidate for Alpha.
And it's also
which
like,
I think is fair.
Yeah, I think it's also a reflection of how people like us are feeling. Not people like us, but like we feel somewhat similar about Ionios. Why does Kevis and Agnes need to fight? Why is Mobius here? Why do people keep dying? And I sort of related with Niall on that, like, why is this happening? But then she took the more drastic approach by listening to the man with the silver hair and the kind eyes, I guess she says. Yeah. But the Niall from the city, that was very relatable. I also liked I loved the fact that we got like I had a theory that we would see Gondor in this. We would see Gondor of some sort, like some kind of Gondor. And I mean, we also kind of knew that based off of the data mine and leaks, but I was like, we need to figure out why Gondor hates her name so much. And it's really cool because Gondor is named after like a very important figure in the city. The
true original founder. Yeah.
And of course that's N's son, but oh my god, I love that cutscene with Gondor and Niall and N, because like some of Gondor's words hit like really hard. Like, he's like, "Oh, father, why are you doing this? You told me yourself. You told me to make friends and like do all this." And I'm like, dang, that's so sad. And yeah, and
that
N doesn't want to kill him because
than
N remembers that's his son, but he was like, "I have to do this, but I don't want to." And then Gondor is the one who sacrifices himself, so that was very sad.
Yeah, the whole juxtaposition of like, even in that state, N didn't want to kill his son. He had to because Gondor threw himself. He fell for the trick with Alpha and Niall, unfortunately. But you know, he's still acting on the idea of wanting to protect his granddaughter first and foremost, like how Matthew wants to protect his sister. And then it just ends up being this is his choice. And he gets
this is the path that I have taken. Yeah. Very moving cutscene. I loved it.
Really hard hitting.
Yeah,
much more so than I expected.
Yeah. I really like A. A is a very great character. Seeing A, like their interactions with Shulk was very wholesome because you're like, who is A? Who is this like person? Who is A? And then A reveals they're like oh, the memories I had with you, Shulk, I still remember them, and you're like, oh my god, this is Alvis, but in a different kind of like
form.
Appearance, and
it's
I actually got
literally
that right. Yeah.
It's literally A is the literal embodiment of everything that like Alvis was in Xenoblade 1.
Yeah.
But more than that, to me, A is the literal embodiment of the final promise that they made to Shulk at the end of Xenoblade 1.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially like, you know, in the grand finale as they walk towards the future hand in hand, you know?
Yeah.
It wasn't a lie.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing about A is in the video I made pre-Future Redeemed release, I was saying I feel like Alvis might have split in two, sort of like how Numa split into how Mythr created Pyra. That's sort of what happened, not exactly, but sort of, kind of as well.
I like that. My whole shtick was, it's like, you say, okay, Logos was 1, Numa was 2, maybe Ontos is 3. And then they're like, who's the third? Riku?
Yeah.
And then now we have a whole different sort of like, who's Riku's actual dad? Is it Ricky or is it Kino?
Yeah, but that's also cool. Riku got his lore explained. His master pawn is Melia. He is part of the Ricky family tree. I subscribe to Kino more. I initially thought it was Ricky, but I think I say Kino because Kino has a very like he respects Ricky so much because Kino is adopted by Ricky. So I think it would be weird if Ricky is like, oh, I'm naming my son Riku after myself, but it would make sense if Kino names his son Riku after his adoptive father that he looks up to, Ricky. So that's what I think.
Right,
but,
and then it's just like, it's still weird to think. It's like, but then it goes to like an apprentice Nopon to Melia, and I'm just like, what? You know?
Yeah, that's what like I want to see like we're not gonna see it, but it's really interesting to think Melia and Riku engineering these like swords, like the Lucky Sevens, as well as Melia possibly engineering the gauntlets. I think so. Melia probably was the one who engineered the gauntlets with the help of Nia, obviously, whereas Nia probably engineered the stone more so than Melia did. Melia is more engineering the swords.
Which is also just another juxtaposition, because all the way back the first time you go to Aerith Sea, everyone's just like, how can a city be floating like this? And then Melia's like, I don't quite understand it myself. To be honest, like I've never had the need to think on it. And then now you have a Melia that's like interested in technology and just like working towards these sort of things like Origin, like working with the medium of light to create Origin, working with in Future Connected to try and perhaps get a way to return Telethia or advance Telethia genetics back into Hyantia.
Oh yeah,
you know?
Teelan was definitely hard at work on that. So I think I think Teelan definitely made some progress. I think Shulk took Melia under his wing and he's like, hey, I'll help you with some engineering stuff.
You know, that's the one
feel like,
character. Those are the two characters now. I'm surprised we didn't have even a remote hint in Future Redeemed for was Tyrea.
Yeah, Tyrea and Teelan, I would have loved to see them.
Now I'm surprised about Tyrea.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah, Tyrea was mentioned once in the base game, but not in the way that I wanted her to be. She was like, oh, one of my family members tried to kill me. And I'm like, don't talk about Tyrea like that. I mean, I'm like, everyone remembers Tyrea tried to kill you, but that's not like... It's interesting because you having played Xenoblade 1 didn't get that extra Tyrea side quest and didn't get Future Connected. So you always probably saw Tyrea as like a antagonistic enemy.
There was
until,
only
like,
the
10 years later,
Yeah, there was only the one bonus post-game quest with Tyrea, but nothing beyond that for base Future.
But that wasn't in the base game, right? That
was in the base game.
Oh, okay. I thought that was exclusive to Definitive Edition.
No, it was in the base game. Yeah, and
Okay.
then they chose
Okay.
to expand on that.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Teal'c was entirely just an NPC with a lot of post-game quests as
Yeah.
well.
Oh, okay. Oh, Teal'c was also there. Okay. So Teal'c was expanded in Future Connected. That's cool.
Teal'c is actually an NPC
In
like
Alchemoth?
within Alchemoth,
Okay.
and then you help them with getting materials back from Alchemoth and like helping to restart some of the things inside of Alchemoth. In the base game of Xenoblade 1 in the post game.
You know what's funny? I just realized that two Nintendo characters who are both kids have similar sounding names. Teal'c in Xenoblade and Tulin, who is Teba's son, who we'll see in Tears of the Kingdom. But yeah, that's besides the point. But I want to quickly talk about some other characters before we talk about the radio and then close out. But
Of course.
Nicole was great. I enjoyed Nicole. Not much to say on Nicole. I really actually liked him more than other people did because this guy is really shy, really like reserved, but he like comes out of his shell and he's like, hey, I trust you guys now. Like at first he only trusted Matthew, and it was like a really shy little guy, and you're like, hey, I want to be there for him, I want to help him out. And seeing his interactions with Shulk and everything, it was great. Hot take here, very hot take. Not the biggest fan of Glimmer. Glimmer's like design, like the design that Saito went with her, perfect, very good. Personality wise, I'm not the biggest fan.
Attitude just a little
Not
too
the biggest
strong.
fan because like she was going for the Mithra Tsundere kind of thing, and Mithra did it very well. I'm not saying Mithra did it well, but like I think Mithra's character was pulled off very well with that. Glimmer just came off as very annoying, and I'm like, stop,
A lot of people dislike Glimmer initially because of the Juju way that she goes about things. You know, we rescue her, she just runs off, gets captured again.
Oh,
then
you put the words in my mouth.
Then Shulk gets a hold. Then Shulk gets a hold of her, promises to keep her safe, and then she just runs off again.
I didn't
and it's
like
that
I
for,
didn't
like, a hot
equate
minute.
the
And
Juju thing. Like now that you say
I
that,
can understand
it makes me
that.
like it makes me realize why I don't like her that much.
But I can understand why, because again, like Nicole's shy. He's clearly not meant to be the best soldier out there. If you want to look again for another parallel, you know, at the very start of the game, Shulk has to rely on Ryan. He's not built like a soldier. He has to rely on the
Ryan
people
and
around him.
Dunban, even Fiora.
Meanwhile,
like there are some hints that Fiora's like she's really strong, and she's like had like tussles with Ryan in the past and stuff as well. So like,
and she's like, you have to do this because Shulk's not going to defend himself.
Yeah,
I remember that. And then
yeah.
meanwhile, you have Nicole, who's not meant to be a soldier. He can't even summon a blade, so he has to rely on wits and technology. But so that's the part of Nicole that I like. It's more the fact that, you know, he's more accepting, he's more tame of a character, and I think that's why people tend to not like him as much. But I can understand a little bit from Glimmer because, you know, this is someone who embraced, like, not necessarily combat, but the ideals of, like, the Homecoming, for example.
She was
so
like
they embraced a lot of
and lands before becoming Ouroboros, basically.
Exactly.
But more extreme, to a more extreme extent, I think. She was kind of like a Garval or something like that, who was really obsessed with this whole idea of, I need to reach my homecoming. I am so close.
I don't want to fight any longer. I hate fighting, but homecoming is soon, and soon I'll be like again, another parallel to 2. It's like I'll be free of this world. I'll be beyond this world. I don't have to be alive much longer. Homecoming's on the way.
Yeah, and like I think one of the biggest mysteries ever for like these two characters was, we read their statue descriptions. How do they live to 80 years old? And we did figure that out, and the explanation was very heartfelt. At first you think like, oh, Shulk and Rex are sacrificing themselves, but then you realize like they'll be back once Ionios is like gone and Origin does its thing and the worlds have combined. They'll be back.
And in this way they give their children like a moment of respite from the war. They're just like have a full life. You don't need to fight any longer beyond this point. Just live a full life, do what you need to do, and we'll see you when this is over. And they're like, how? It's like, you'll see.
We'll see. Yeah, yeah.